explain about the background to care. I read the press a lot, and there's an awful lot of stuff in the press that they just get wrong. So I want to give you the edited highlights of the current legislation so that tells you what happens when people need care. Then I want to move on to the sort of things that are now available and how that can actually be of use to people like yourselves. I know none of you in this room need care now, but that's not the point. People need to know about it. Equally, the people that need to know about it are usually the children of the people who are now needing care, or the relatives of the people who are now needing care, so they know the sorts of things that are available, whether that's the quality advice or whether it's the products that can help them do stuff. And I'm also going to tell you about the Care Act and how that works in practice, the financial side of it. And then I'll be passing you over to Sue, and Sue will talk about the about caring and stuff. Okay, if you do have any questions as we go through, please sing out. You won't throw me. Put your hand up. I'll try and answer it then if I can. If not, as Paul said, there is a space for questions later on. This is a slide I always like to show people. This is the population in the UK aged 85 and over. The population aged 85 and over is the fastest growing sector of the UK demographic. This age group of people is growing in numbers faster than any other age group in the UK demographic. It's going to double in numbers in the next 20 years and increase by the same amount in the 20 years after that. However, I've highlighted this bit here because that bit there covers 10 years. I've highlighted that. It covers the period from 2000 to 2011. You can see that the population aged 85 actually went down at that point. Not by much, but it went down. Do you know why? No? Someone usually says they died. Yeah, but when did they die? If you count back 85 years, you get to the First World War.
It wasn't the flu epidemic, was it?
It was the First World War and the flu epidemic in its immediate aftermath. That meant there was a huge drop in the birth rate at that time, and you feed that through 85 years and you can see that's the impact it had. We are now through that and we're now here. And I've been saying for years, you may recall that Tony Blair was in power here. There were a number of initiatives that came to the fore, including the Royal Commission on Long-Term Care at that time, and he did nothing about it. And the reason he did nothing about it is because on his watch there was not a growing ageing population. However, we're through that now, and you can see how fast that population aged 85 and over is taking off. That's why politicians know they've got to do something about it. Politicians also know that old people vote, and this is very important to old people, and that's why you'll see politicians including it in their manifestos. So, it's acknowledged, therefore, that a lot of people over the age of 85, there's around 500,000 people over the age of 85 are currently requiring care. It's about 16% of the population aged 85 and over are already receiving some form of long-term care. The cost of care, everyone focuses on care homes. Now, this is a slide that says that the average cost of a private care home with nursing in the UK is £731 a week. I would say actually that's on the cheap side. I'd say that's quite low. But that includes all those care homes that service social services with local authority contracted beds. So that is included in that average figure, and of course that drags it down. If we talk to a lot of self-funders, people who are funding their own care, and it's no surprise to people in this room to know that the sort of figures we're dealing with day in, day out are 900, 950, 1,000, and even higher than that. The most expensive care home I've been to is £2,000 a week. I know it's nice. It's really nice. Yeah, I mean, I'd happily go there now. It's quite interesting. My mum, my mum from the story of my me and my mum, my mum is now 85. She's 86 this year. And of course, things are coming full circle with my mum requiring care. And what's interesting is my mum's viewpoint of care homes is completely different to mine. I visit a lot of care homes and I see some great care going on in some good care homes. Yeah, it's expensive, but I see some good quality care. Whereas my mum, because of her age, she still thinks back to care homes are not an ideal place to be. See, I think it's probably safer, but you know, that's probably a generational thing. If I were to stop anybody in the street and ask them if they need care, where would they like to go? They go, I want to stay at home. That's what everybody says. They want to stay at home. And the reason they want to stay at home is because it's secure, it's their safe environment. And that's what my mum says. The trouble is my mum's losing mobility and her only toilet is upstairs. And her house cannot be amended so that she can have a toilet downstairs. Now, one day she's going to fall down those stairs. And the day she falls down those stairs... Now, people say, well, put a stair lift in. Well, you know, with the construction of my mum's stairs, all you're doing is lifting her to the top of a very unsafe place. And I'm not sure that that's a good idea. Anyway, that's my personal situation. People think that care at home's the best thing. They also think it's cheaper. If you're paying for care yourself, it's not. Yes, it's fair to say that care at home can be cheaper if you can persuade friends, family to look after you. But I can tell you, if you've got children, that's why they've moved away and emigrated. Okay? so that they don't have to look after you. If you do have to pay, you can check it out on websites or phone up agencies and they'll tell you. A rise and retire package, you'll probably get charged about 3 hours a day. The average hourly rate's probably between 12 and 18 pounds an hour. So it's going to cost you something like 40, 45 pounds a day to get up and go to bed. That's 315 pounds a week. And all you did was get up and go to bed. To have someone to sit with you at night, it varies, probably 50 to 80 pounds a night, again, depending on where you live. Sorry, and the rest, double that, okay? So you can see it soon adds up. We have a client who is having 24-hour-a-day care at home. Yes, they're quite wealthy. Yes, they can afford it, I guess, but they're paying £90,000 a year for their round-the-clock care. Now, that's not going to be the case with everybody. A lot of people having care at home, they have very modest needs, and therefore it's a lot easier to support them. But if you are determined to stay at home, it can get frighteningly expensive. Okay. As you probably know, when people need care currently, you'll get means tested. In England, the means test threshold is currently £23,250. If you have means testable assets in excess of £23,250, you will get no financial assistance from the local authority at all. Yes, you may be able to qualify for certain non-means tested state benefits, and I'll come to those later, but you will get no financial assistance from the local authority. If you have less than 23,250, then yes, you will qualify for some support from the local authority. But you'll notice I say support, because a lot of people think if you've got less than that, the state will pay for your care. No, they won't. What happens is they will take all of your income and use that as your contribution towards their contract rate. Do you remember I told you with the story of my grandmother, they said that Woodley's was too expensive because they got a contract rate? That's what happens. Every local authority has their usual or contract rate for care homes of different categories. And so they set that rate, and you won't find anything cheaper than a local authority contract rate. They set that rate, they will take your income as your contribution towards it. They let you keep something called a personal expense allowance, which has just gone up to a staggering £24.90 a week. Oh, unless you live in Wales, it's £25 a week. So they'll let you keep that, but they'll take all the rest of your income as your contribution towards the contract rate. Okay? So that's how it works. Now, I'm going to tell you something a bit complicated. There are actually two means test thresholds. You'll see why I'm telling you this, because it's relevant later on. There are two means test thresholds. There's the upper one at 23,250, and then there's a lower one, which is disregarded capital, and that's currently 14,250. They let you keep that so that you can have a funeral and leave something to your children and grandchildren. So they let you keep 14,250. If you have between those two figures, then they convert it into income by a very complex method called tariff income. And what they do is they say every £250 you have between those two figures, 14,250 and 23,250, every £250 is worth £1 a week in income. And then they add that to your other income so that they calculate what your contribution is going to be. Do you see how that works? You'll hold that thought because it works. You'll see how it's used again later when I talk about the carer. So that's means testing. A lot of people think about the house being the main asset, was indeed in my grand's case. Do you remember the lady from social services said, is there a Mr. Worth? The reason why she asks that is because if there is a partner or spouse living in the property, it will be disregarded from the means test. If there's a relative over the age of 60 living in the property, a relative with an incapacity, and a relative of any age that is with an incapacity, or a dependent child under the age of 18, and for the first 12 weeks of going into a care home, the house is disregarded from the means test. Irrespective of who owns it or how it's owned, the house is disregarded from the means test for the first 12 weeks, or if any of those other things come into play. Okay? And it's one of those areas that the media tend to get wrong a bit. All right? So, particularly if there's a partner or spouse living in the property, it will be disregarded from the means test. Now, if you go and talk to a lot of solicitors, they'll tell you that one of the most common things that happens to them is someone wheels mother into their office and says, this is my mother, she'd like to give her house to me. Yeah. And the solicitor says, and why is that? She loves me. Yes, of course she loves you. Is there another reason for that? And by the time they get down to it, they eventually work out that the real reason is if she needs care, we don't want the house to go paying for care. Well, there is something called deliberate deprivation of assets. And if the local authority believes that you have deliberately deprived yourself of assets in order to benefit from means testing, they have rules whereby they can just count it all back in again. They can completely ignore it. Now again, there's a lot of nonsense talked about this. People will say, well, as long as you do it so many years or months beforehand, it's okay. That's complete nonsense. There is no time limit. I see the 6-month rule a lot. That indeed is an old piece of legislation that has absolutely nothing to do with it, but they kind of linked it in. And it really is, if you hear people talk about that, it's just wrong. It's an old piece of legislation that's dead now anyway. You might hear people talk about 7 years. That's inheritance tax, and it's got nothing to do with care. You might hear people talk about 2 and 5 years. I'll tell you the relevance of those. That comes under insolvency legislation. And some local authorities have started looking at insolvency legislation. That is, if someone runs up a bill of £750 they can't pay, which is what, a week and a half in a care home, so a local authority care home anyway. So if you run up a bill of £750 you can't pay, any creditor is allowed, therefore, to take steps to make you bankrupt in order to recoup that money. And the point of that is it enables them to look at assets that you've given away in previous years. And a lot of local authorities are starting to look at using that legislation in order to leverage that to make it a legal approach. It's expensive for them to do it, but nevertheless, there's a few of them have looked at it. The first one to do it was Suffolk, actually, and it was a few years ago when Suffolk did it. But if you go on Google, if you've got access to the internet, if you go on Google and look up Suffolk County Council versus Mrs. Youngman, it's all in there. It's gone down a couple of pages now because it's a few years old. But the point of this really is that local authorities are starting to take this subject very seriously. People depriving themselves of assets you're not going to benefit from means testing. The one thing I would say too is even if it worked, what you're really doing is putting yourself at the behest of the local authority, who will then start dictating where you receive your care and the sort of quality that you want. And most people probably want that if they had a choice. So there we are. I mentioned I would talk about state benefits. The main state benefit that people over the age of 65 qualify for when it comes to care is the attendance allowance. It is not means tested and it's paid out free of tax. It's paid to the individual who needs care in order that they can buy in an attendant, someone to help them. The higher rate is £82.30 per week. That's just gone up as of April. And the higher rate is paid if you require care both by day and by night. If you require care either by day or by night, then you get the lower rate of £55.10 a week. So this is for people who require care for a period of 6 months or are terminally ill and are over the age of 65 when they claim it. If you're under 65, it's called Disability Living Allowance, or PIP, as it's called now. Okay? So that's for people who need care. The carer's allowance is often confused. The carer's allowance is paid to the carers. That's the people doing informal care. There's about 6.5 million people in the UK providing informal care. That's a great army of people saving the state a fortune. So this amount of money is paid to carers. Now, hobby horse of mine this. The carers allowance, you can see, is £62.10 per week. To be eligible for the carers allowance, you have to be over the age of 18 and not in full-time education. You need to be providing care for a minimum of 35 hours a week. That's kind of a full-time job. And you need to have an income of less than £103 a week. In return for that, they'll give you less than the minimum wage. Isn't that nice of them? If they only were to increase that significantly, that is the best value. I know Sue agrees with that. That would be the best value of taxpayers' money, saving the state an absolute fortune and ensuring that people are looked after much better by the people that they want to look after. Instead of which, most people who are providing care probably can't qualify for it. If you think of people past pension age, they can't qualify for it because they'll get pension credit, which will take them way above that. So it's bonkers. Anyway, for people in care homes, all nursing is free in this country. Therefore, there's an amount of money that is paid by the NHS directly to care homes to fund the nursing that they receive in a care home. You need to qualify for it, and that's a nursing test rather than a financial test, because it is not means tested. It's all about need. If you qualify for it because you have a nursing requirement and you are in a care home, then the care home will be paid £112 per week for the individual. It's important when you check, when you ask a care home what their fees are, you need to find out whether that includes or excludes the RNCC, the Registered Nursing Care Contribution.
Can I just say, Brian,
Yep.
you only get the RNC if you're in a nursing home, not a rest home.
Yes, yeah, they call them care, everyone
I know
refers to
people just get one of the
care homes. Officially it's a care home with nursing nowadays, but Sue's right, you know, they're nursing homes and residential homes, and so you'd need to be in a nursing home in order to qualify for the Registered Nursing Care Contribution. The final thing I've got on there is NHS Continuing Care. That is again about we receive nursing free at the point of delivery. If you have a very major nursing need, you could qualify for something called NHS Continuing Care, and that is where the NHS fund all your eligible needs. So that includes your accommodation costs. You could be in a care home requiring quite a substantial amount of nursing. I won't go into the eligibility criteria because it's complex. and then you could meet that criteria, and under those circumstances, the NHS will meet all of your care costs as assessed. It's not necessary all of it. There's about 45,000 people in the UK who are currently benefiting from NHS continuing care. It is very hard to qualify for. You've got to be in quite a serious nursing need in order to be eligible for it. Okay, so those are the main state benefits that people qualify for. The legal system is really key. Do you remember I said that me and my mum were the enduring powers of attorney for my gran? I can't tell you how important it is that everybody appoints someone to manage their affairs when they are no longer mentally able to. It is so, so important. If you haven't got an enduring or lasting power of attorney already, please, please promise me you will go and do it. There's a lot of myths about it. People think, oh, it's okay, my wife can do it, my husband can do it. No, they can't. If you lose mental capacity, you've either got to have appointed someone to manage your affairs through a lasting or enduring power of attorney, and if you haven't, then they will get the court protection to do it for you. And that is expensive and time-consuming and is not a great idea, no. So please promise me you'll talk to Paul or your solicitor or someone and make sure that you set up an enduring or lasting power of attorney. And I don't care how young you are, you should always set about doing it now. Don't go there. I have trouble with my father-in-law.
What's the difference between an enduring and a lasting power?
Good question. An enduring power of attorney you can no longer set up. It changed in 2007. Thank you. It changed in 2007. Up until if you set up an enduring power of attorney, it is still valid, but you can't change it. Since 2007, they have changed it so that it's a lasting power of attorney. Lasting power of attorney have two types: finance and property, and health and welfare. Okay? Obviously, health and welfare is important under certain circumstances. Finance and property is really, really key. Talk to a solicitor, talk to them about your situation, and make sure you get the most appropriate one for what you want. You're still yeah, okay. It is so, so important. Checks in the post? Honestly, I cannot tell you how important it is. So promise me, all of you, right? You'll set one up.
Sorry, can I
Yep.
follow that up? Might it then be worth having two lasting powers of attorney, one for the financial side and the other for the health?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's not important for everybody. Equally, some people have got an enduring power of attorney set up, and they also get a lasting power of attorney for health and welfare to cover that aspect. Yeah, it covers things like resuscitation and all sorts of stuff. There's a lady in the southwest, bless her, and she's got, I love this story, it's true, I've seen it, all right? She's got "do not resuscitate" tattooed across her chest. The bit I really like is just here on her shoulder, it says, "please turn over." Anyway.
Can I just ask you one more question?
Yes, of course.
Regarding the enduring power of attorney, does it have to be registered before it can be used? Or if it does, how long does it take?
Okay, good questions. You can act on an unregistered enduring power of attorney providing the donor, that's the person who's granted it, still has mental capacity. As soon as they lose mental capacity, you can't act until it's been registered. It has to be registered with the court protection. Am I doing okay so far?
Yeah.
Good. It has to be registered with the court protection or the Office of the Public Guardian, and they take currently...
Oh, it's about 10 to 12 weeks at the moment.
There you go, about 10 to 12 weeks. Now, with a lasting power of attorney, you can get them. They are not valid at all unless they're registered. And good practice, I think, is to register them straight away. Pay for it, get
So you can, with an enduring power of attorney, you can have it registered, even though it's not, it doesn't need to be used at that point.
As long as the donor hasn't got capacity, yeah.
Yes. If they've still got capacity,
You wouldn't register.
then you wouldn't register.
No,
You only register
that's
it when
what I
they
meant,
lose.
really, whether if you have capacity, whether it can be registered.
No,
So
there's no
if you lose
need.
capacity, then it can be used
Straight away.
No,
Don't work like that.
no.
No, okay, thank you.
No, you can only register it when they lose capacity.
Yeah, thank you.
Just one other thing, if anybody is looking to do that in power of attorney, I would still, and with you agree, shop around, because some solicitors will charge astronomical and others will charge a lot less. When we've had our carers exhibition, we've had 3 solicitors and their prices vary. And I
do it yourself.
Oh, you can,
Quite
yeah.
easy.
People
You can do it yourself. Yeah.
Can you do it online?
Yes.
Yes, you can do them online. Yeah, you can do them yourself. You can do them online. I vote now, next I weren't here. Yeah, you can. Please look. The important thing is do one. I mean, just get one. Okay. I would personally rather you got some advice about the way in which it's set up, because everyone's circumstances are different. And I would probably shop around and find a good lawyer, but I know Paul wouldn't invite anyone other than a really good lawyer to one of his seminars. Okay, good. I'm glad I put that slide up now. So that's the current situation. That's the current situation, okay, with regard to care. It is changing because of the Care Act 2014. Now, it only affects England. It doesn't affect Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland. However, what I've done here is I've put up the bullet points of the way in which you'll read it in the newspapers, or the way in which government ministers are telling you about it. What they're saying is that with effect from April 2016, that's when this comes in, they're saying that no one will ever have to pay more than £72,000 for their care in their lifetime. They are going to increase the means test threshold from its current level of £23,250 to £118,000. Although, if there's a house that has been disregarded, so if your partner or spouse lives in it and the house is disregarded, then that means test threshold drops to £27,000. So it's only £118,000 if it includes a house. And they also said they're going to introduce what's called an accommodation charge of £12,000 per annum. What they've said is they think it's only fair that people should have to pay for their own accommodation, board and lodging, because when you're fit and healthy you do, and it would only be fair that when you go into a care home you still carry on paying that. And they put a figure on it of £230 a week. When they announced this, most people did not understand what that accommodation charge bit was there for. I should tell you. So let's go through it one by one. They're going to introduce a care cap, so no one will ever have to pay more than £72,000 for their care in their lifetime. Now, when I read that, I went, so what I do is I check my mum into the local Sunrise care home, other care homes are available, which charges £1,000 a week, and 72 weeks later the state's going to pick up the tab. Is that going to happen? No, of course not. So that's when you have to read the small print. What it says is, 1, in order for your care cap, or theoretical care account, to start accruing, you have to engage with the local authority. And you have to have an assessment. And you have to meet the new universal eligibility criteria, which has been set at what they call substantial. So you will need to have a substantial care need. The substantial comes from something called Fair Access to Care Services. It's a scale of ability to carry out activities of daily living, effectively, and the names are quite descriptive. You don't have to know how many activities of daily living go behind it, because the names are quite descriptive. The names are low care need, moderate care need, substantial care need, and critical care need. They've set it at roughly substantial, So you will have to have a substantial care need before anything that you're paying for care will count towards your cap. If you have a low or moderate care need, or indeed no care need, then anything you pay for your care will not accrue towards your cap. Okay? So you've got to have a substantial care need. Then you'd think whatever you're paying for your care will count towards that cap. No, it won't. What counts towards that cap is, do you remember we've already talked about local authority contract rates? What counts towards the cap is what the local authority would have paid for your care, whether that's at home or in a care home. Now the average, do you remember I showed you that slide that said the average cost of a private care home with nursing is £731 a week? Currently, the average local authority contract rate is £490 a week. Okay? Now, so it's what the local authority would pay towards your care, not what you're paying. And I can tell you it's not even that, because that's where the accommodation charge comes in. So let's take our average local authority contract rate of £490 a week. What counts towards your cap is £490 less the accommodation charge, which is £230 a week. So it's actually only £260 a week in that average local authority that will accrue towards your cap. Which means, yeah, it will take you about 5 1/4 years to accrue your cap, by which time you'll have spent in excess of £200,000 paying for your care. If you do manage to struggle on and exist for your 5 1/4 years and actually achieve your £72,000 cap, the local authority will then contribute the contract rate less the accommodation charge towards what you're paying. You'll still be paying £950 a week or whatever it is, but at least they'll be contributing.
So whilst they say it's going to go up, it's brilliant. Basically what it means is hard luck, you still ain't going to get anything. So there we are. It's no wonder some people are very cynical about this carrot. They have also introduced a deferred payment scheme. That's for people who have got a house and virtually nothing else. Under those circumstances, you can now go to the local authority, and the local authority will loan you money against your house. They'll put a charge on your property, and they'll loan you money at 2.65% interest. So it's a subsidised rate, but you have to settle it as soon as the house is sold or the individual dies. They call it universal because it's now available from every local authority. They have to provide it. The previous one, local authorities provided it if they wanted to, but that was interest free. So they've made it, now every local authority has to do it, but they charge 2.65%. When you take the deferred payment scheme, okay. With the deferred payment scheme, you're still a self-funder, so you should be allowed to go to any care home you like. But they will take your income from you and let you keep your personal expense allowance. So that's the way in which they do it. But some local authorities are saying, but you're only allowed to go to a local authority contract rate care home. That is not true. You can go anywhere you like because you're a self-funder. Does that answer your question? Okay, I want to mention SOLLA. I've been involved with setting up the Society of Later Life Advisors, and I'm on the advisory board. The advisors who belong to this, and Society of Later Life Advisors is a consumer organisation. It's not for marketing or anything, it's a consumer organisation. We are adamant that people like Paul, who become members of the Society of Later Life Advisors, have to be really good at what they do. They have to go through a very, very rigorous assessment process. Paul will tell you. I can tell you how rigorous it is because I'm on the assessment panel. And I have this little test that says, would I put this advisor in front of my mum? If the answer is yes, they pass. If the answer is no, they fail. It's pretty simple. Now, there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into it. I would heartily recommend that if you're ever in a care situation, you've got family members, and you want to find a financial advisor who knows about this whole later life financial advice and indeed care fees planning advice, you go onto their website and there is a find an advisor section, and that way you know you can rely on finding someone like Paul. I won't bang on that. But the sort of things Paul will do is he'll take you through the care funding solutions, the sorts of things that are available when people need care. It's the typical things, you know, when my gran needed care, we didn't know any different. We sold the house, put the money in the building society and used that. That's not really very effective use of funds. There are other ways of doing it, and Paul will take you through those. There is something that we do as a company called an immediate needs annuity. I prefer to call them immediate care plans nowadays, because nobody likes the word annuity anymore. But nevertheless, an immediate care plan really is about, you can only buy one if you need care. You can't buy it in advance of needing care. You must be requiring care to buy one. Now what that usually means is the person needing care doesn't buy it at all. It's their family that buys it. It's their children. It's their lasting and enduring powers of attorney that buy them. Because basically what it does is, in return for a single premium, we pay a regular monthly amount of money for the rest of their life now that they need care. It capitalises that ongoing cost of care. It means you can, now that they need care, the biggest fear is what happened to my gran, running out of money. And what we can do with this is we can capitalise that ongoing cost of care. Probably the best way, or the good thing about it, the benefits are paid out free of tax. As long as it's paid directly to a registered care provider, that's a care home or a care agency, then they're paid out free of tax. Every case is underwritten on its own merits. There's no rate tables or anything. We get every case in individually, we underwrite it, so we get medical information, the GP report, the care home report, and we underwrite it on that basis. That means that everything is specific to that individual and priced accordingly.